in starting with the history of money, allow me just to cover that. For something to be considered as money, it has to be a unit of account. That is something with a numerical value to it. It also has to be a store of value, then something that you consider valuable. And the third thing is that it has to be a medium of exchange. That is, you can exchange this currency or this aspect for something else that you want in exchange. Now, those are the basic functions of money. In currency, which is an aspect of money, legal tender is different from money in that currency in the form of or as legal tender is largely regulated by centralized authorities such as central banks. This is the reason why you have like the dollar, the yen, shilling, and euro, and whatever your native currency is or your home country's currency is. Currencies then, secondly, can appreciate or depreciate over time. You've heard about countries which had the strongest currencies, let's say 20 years ago, but right now then, their currencies are not worth that much. You hear things and stories about people who have to carry bags of money just to pay for basic household goods. And you wonder, you are able to swipe, maybe you are able to just make a payment in a click of a button, but someone else has to carry massive bags of money just to make a single payment, or the same that you would. Currency, again, is in the form of paper, that is fiat or coins. Now, this distinction between money and currency is that for money, it's that it's taken far more forms than currency, which is why if we go back into history, we'll see the different forms of money that were acceptable then that might not be as acceptable right now, but they still hold value. So where were we, back in the day? If you did not find, or maybe you read about barter trade, then maybe consider yourself fortunate, right? Back when we had, barter trade, it would be that I have to exchange something for something else. So let's say I had my cows, my goats, I had my bags of grain and be it rice, beans, or whatever, and I wanted to exchange that with someone else. It's that we needed to have different commodities, then agree at the point that we will exchange so that it's valuable, it's a mutual exchange, okay? So if I said that I want your rice, then you want my beans, then, we didn't need to have someone else involved as a third party. And barter trade worked for quite a while, for several generations until it couldn't work anymore. That paved way now for commodity money. So the era of cowrie shells, the era of, different kinds of, so if you just go back in time, then you'll see different communities use different things. Some used salt, and you can, it's as far back in time as you want to step. So salt was once upon a time the most valuable commodity. Cowrie shells, then they were rare. Maybe you've gone to, any of the beaches close by to you, and you just see some of those shells. Some of them are really aesthetic to the eye. They just, you want to collect them actually. So you imagine if you could collect all the shells you could and fill up your hands with them, and back in the day you'd be significantly rich because, well, those shells had value to them, but not right now. And it's not even encouraged right now. So that paved way now still for commodity, now metal money, that is silver, gold, and copper, precious metals, or metals that were considered rare. But then now with metals, it's that how they differed from like the barter trade system is that metals could be, you could quantify a metal. You could say this weight in gold in terms of kilograms or tons. Gold was not perishable. Whereas, well, if we were to exchange, for example, perishable goods, and whatever I exchanged you ran out or went bad, you couldn't come back to me and then start arguing that what I gave you ran out of value, right? But the era now of metal money is that it couldn't, it couldn't be devalued as quickly as commodities. So in that instance, then you have people who are able to trade more, more constructively, if I may use that term. And in this era, it's that I can say, I want this weight in gold, or that weight in silver, or that weight in copper, or whichever other metal was agreeable upon. Now, this also paved way for regulation by way of either merchants or more trusted authorities, the intermediaries. And you will appreciate why this had to come to be, because if you and I had to argue about the amount of gold we wanted to exchange, but the next day we come and find out that the gold is worthless, then what will we do, right? I'll encourage you to check out a documentary. It's a very short one. It should be about 20 minutes on one of the arguably one of the wealthiest figures in history called Mansa Musa. Now, Mansa Musa is reported to have owned, I think, $14 trillion in today's equivalent of gold, because he was a ruler of the Mali Empire. And he was reported to be one of the most philanthropic figures of his time, that he would pretty much give away wealth. He would build community resources wherever he went. And it's a really exciting thing to just jog up your mind and see how people lived back then. But now there isn't too much in history to either verify or just put weight to the accuracy in terms of that story. But it's just exciting to see how the richest person in the world at the time did live. Now, a few centuries or decades down the line, the era of paper money. Now, paper money was quite odd, because if you're used to gold, then now you start using papers. You have to start wondering, what's the value of this paper? But it's not really the paper that was worth the most important thing, but the value that the governments would declare this paper is worth. So if this certificate that you hold in your hand, for instance, you have your degree certificate, your diploma, your educational certificates, you believe they are worth something, right? And you hold that certificate in trust that someone else will recognize your skills. If you don't have that certificate, then what do you have to tell this person that you have a specific skill? Now, that's the concept that is into paper money. Now, fiat is a Latin term that explains, an expectation of trust or faith in something. Now, in this sense, you have to have faith in the government that it has accorded this value to this paper, so that if I give you this paper, then you don't get to question why I'm giving you this paper. You have to accept it, and you have to trust that the government will hold that paper as valuable. Now, that's the concept of fiat, because if I give you $20 right now, if I give you $30 right now, and well, of course, for this session, you need to get keen on the details so that you're able to win some prizes at the end. It's that you have that faith that this paper is worth something. Okay. Now, this skipping over a few more decades to the era of plastic money. After both world wars, more countries had the imperative, the need to rebuild their economies, because war is one of the most devastating things that can happen to any economy. So debt comes into the picture, and debt is still another form of a promise that I am going to give you this money, and in exchange you will promise to repay. Now, at the point that you're promising to repay, you do not have that means to repay, but you have an impulse, you have an obligation to to do business or get income so that you can actually pay that money. So this plastic concept of plastic money, credit cards, and the era of debt financing is that you're getting money that doesn't exist right now, but because of a few figures, it's a promise that these figures will be transferred to you in the real world, and you will be able to transact in a way that you can get income or do business, then get revenue, then repay, but with interest. That's we're going to get into interest a little bit more. Then here, as we are today, the era of cryptocurrency or digital money. Now, with the exciting thing about cryptocurrencies or digital money, it's that you don't need, for the first time in history, a centralized authority to govern the value of this money, right? Before, communities could traditionally agree what was worth something to them, be it cowrie shells, be it salt, or however much gold or silver they wanted to use, right? But we are, call it a journey back in time, or time travel, that we're going back to a time where people had control over their money, right? And this is what we have with cryptocurrencies, that you have control of your funds. No central authority can either freeze your accounts or delay your payments or determine how much money you can have, right? And this is what we've seen, for instance, with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other cryptocurrencies which have come as pretty significant in the crypto market, okay? So think about that. This is how money has evolved. It's taken different forms, but the point is that you have a unit of account that I can count whatever I have. I have a store value that if I hold this this metal or this asset or this thing, it's going to be valuable. It's giving me some sense of worth, right? And it's a medium of exchange that if I want something else, then I can use this to exchange that for whatever it is I want, right? So I don't know what's the, what the biggest thing maybe you've ever bought. Let me just ask it in the chat section. Let's engage. What's the biggest thing you've ever wanted to buy? Is it a car? Is it a house? Is it, I don't know, is it some luxury item? Is it a watch for those who love collector shoes, collector, items? Answer it in the chat section. What's the most valuable thing you've ever wanted to buy and how much was it worth? Have you bought it or are you still planning to save for it? Write that in the chat section. Let's engage. So now, allow me to highlight something else. Why did barter trade succeed for so long? And this is crucial to understand because it's going to lay a foundation for us appreciating, what cryptocurrencies are worth, because some of the ideas which tend to be for or against cryptocurrency tend to find some answers in the beginning stages of barter trade. So why did barter trade succeed? There was value exchange that I knew if I'm going to talk to you, if we are going to set some terms whereby we must set an exchange, we knew we are going to exchange value. It's not that you're setting me up or I'm trying to scam you. We had to do that. There was a perception of value in the sense that whatever I'm going to bring to you is not worthless, right? And that builds upon the third point that there had to be incentives on social status. It was in my highest interest to actually do what was right to someone else. So there was that heavy reliance on social trust and social status. There was sufficient ownership also and control of independent, which was independent of intermediaries. What does this mean? It meant that, if I want to be the best trader in this marketplace, if I want to be the best trader in the region, that people constantly come to me. And this the parallel today is that if you have your, let's say your online page where you're selling different goods and services, you need recommendations and reviews, right? And a lot of people, when they're doing, for instance, e-shopping or just online browsing categories and all that, they'll want to see, has someone else bought this product? Have they tried it out? Was it delivered in time? Was it the right size, quantity, or color? Was it, could I return it if it didn't fit or something, it had an issue? And this is what social trust has taken the form of. But back in the day, it worked with barter trade, that someone could say, Roselyne or Brian are good with so and so, you can get the best produce from them and you get the best rates from them. Social trust worked then, and we still need it now in different forms, right? But why did it fail? Why did we start using commodity money in the form of salt or curry shells or silver, gold, and the rest? It's that there was a coincidence of one. So let's say I get to the marketplace and that day, brands, half of brands' cows were raided, and I needed the full number of the cows. So if we arrive there and we have this argument, like, I don't care if you had your cows raided. I don't care if you were almost, you were robbed along the way. You were beaten up, and you didn't show. Maybe you didn't even show up. Someone else had to show up on your behalf. If you had the merchants who did care about that, then you had that coincidence of wants that I want something, but at the point that we meet, it's not available, right? Then again, maybe I arrived at the marketplace, but then I saw someone else has healthier cows, fatter cows, bigger cows, and I said, that's what I wanted to buy instead of these other cows. Not that they're bad, but if I see something better, this is human nature. So the variance of human nature, the wild sense of human behavior could not be, could not allow barter trade to be as perfect as it could have been, right? And then again, you have the irrationality of human wants and needs. So those are just on the psychological side of things. Differing exchange rates. Let's say, same marketplace scenario. Let's say I have 200 goats and someone else has 100 cows, and I just say, for my 200 goats, I want only 50 of your cows. So, all those arguments could take extremely long times to just try and resolve or work through, right? And that was a huge waste of time. And not everybody has that, the persistence to negotiate at the marketplace. Not everybody has the integrity at the same time to be in the same marketplace for the best deals. Again, goods couldn't be divided. How do you give me 2.5 cows? How do you, it's not, I don't want a cow. If I wanted a full cow, you get the picture, right? Then it was an unreliable store of value that with barter trade, perishable goods, you cannot, unless you can reverse nature, really, it's perishable. That's a fact. There was an increased need for intermediaries again. Now with that, right, so in that, this you can understand why now commodity money had to be used, because it was more durable, it was easily divisible, and this is something that you could actually count far more easier than you could count other commodities, okay? So this now allows me to pave way for inflation. Now this is one of the biggest threats / fundamental principles of money. And what does it mean? Inflation is basically an increase in prices over time. Now, let's say in 2%, you have different kinds of, different kinds of inflation, like cost pull inflation, supply side inflation, and I'll just break them down in these numbers that you see on your screen. I hope they are clear enough. So if you have an inflation and an increase of price over 2%, it seems small enough, but that's a logical increase because this is a normal range of inflation by economic growth. So let's say you're able to earn more over time, and you have, let's say, a 5% increase in your income every year or every 6 months. You tend to buy more things and you're spending more. So just by that aspect of you being able to spend more, then you can see how economic growth tends to fuel that kind of inflation. Things like, let's say, your typical soda or salt or bread and eggs, those ones may not keep in price highly over time, but that we'll see in the next categories of inflation, okay? Now, the other way that can happen is through increased money supply. That is the government actually printing more money into the economy so that people can, they can either spend on public projects like roads or just infrastructure by as many categories as we want. So either dams and things like that. Now, 5% inflation would mean that this is directly by government regulation, which pushes prices upward. So this can happen through tariffs or taxes, which actually make it more costly to import things or to just basically purchase them, because the producer who has to pay that tax more often than not will pass it on to you as the consumer. So that will mean that things like, let's say, baby formula that has skipped in price over the last 6 months, or to the best of my remembrance. But, basically anything that you go to the shop for, you realize that you're going to spend more over time to get the same thing. Now, there's this common meme that I've seen quite recently, and it says, it's a grandfather sitting with his grandson. So the grandpa says that, son, $2 could actually get me, pretty much everything I needed for breakfast and, some spare change. But the son says in a bit of a sad, in a bit of a sad response, to get the same things with $2, I would need to be away from the CCTV cameras, okay? And that's a pretty sad picture, but this is the reality of inflation, which has meant that the same kind of, the same amount of money cannot get you the same amount of goods over time. 10% inflation, which is the next category that we can consider, is unusually high, but it can occur due to political factors. So when you think about sanctions, restrictions, wars, or, maybe not so much of wars, let's say internal conflict, that can actually do that to the economy, because it costs more for everyone to actually just get the same basic goods that they would have had produced, okay? And that's just the concept that prices are going up over time. 29.78% is the highest ever recorded inflation in the US. And 10 to power 12, which is extremely high. That was the highest ever inflation in history. Now, this happened in Hungary, hyperinflation after World War II. Now, that was, it's pretty devastating for the economy. And you imagine that scenario that, by the time you wake up or barely within the first hour of the day, your money is just dropping in its value, dropping in its worth. And you imagine that what does that to people? Social morale, it kills that. Political ambitions, even those are hanging in the balance, because how can you lead a nation of people who are, literally facing poverty and looking at their money being worthless in their hands? So inflation makes you think about these issues. So inflation below 10% is pretty much standard for different economies, but above 10%, it tends to trigger those alarms of, what do we do? How can we control that? And different governments now address this in their monetary policies or their fiscal policies. So how do you protect, your financial value? So inflation is inevitable. Now, protection is not guaranteed. Why? Because as we saw even within the pandemic, so many people lost their primary sources of income. And that meant that they had to find alternatives. We had to find a way to coexist. We had to find means to be able to keep our heads afloat, right? Now, how do you practically do this? How do you, protect your financial value? Because inflation definitely will be there. The first thing that you have to consider is increased income avenues. That is your cash flow. As I pointed out earlier, well, with the pandemic, a lot of people had to do what you would call side hustles or extra businesses just to keep their basic income afloat, or just, being able to take care of things like rent, your power, utilities, and a few other things that you would need. The second thing is diversified investment and reinvestment. Well, money, the funny thing about it is that you cannot save your way into financial wellness. Why? Saving is critical, yes, but you cannot just, you can't just count on what you have to save, because the fact is that you will be tempted to just spend on the next thing that catches your attention, or you'll be tempted to actually come through for someone else who will ask you, please help me through with this. And, it's just that's just how we are socialized, right? Now, you have to diversify your investment so that even if it's not passive income or it's not real estate, you would need to be able to consider stocks and other digital assets that can at least bring you some decent value over time. And if you know that the inflation rate is between 2 and 10%, then you're looking at investments which will bring you between at least that 11%, 12, 20, decent percentages, so that inflation doesn't erode your value over time. Lifestyle changes. This is another very easy way of protecting your financial value. Now, this is where you guard against money illusion. In economics, money illusion is the scenario whereby, let's say someone is earning about 100,000, okay? So with money illusion, it's that you have to be able to guard against spending more just because you have more income. So let's say, someone earning about that 100,000, and at the minute they get that increment of about 10 or 20%, then, they move to a different neighborhood, they change their wardrobe, they change, just about everything that they were spending on. It means that they will actually have less disposable income over time, right? And that this is one of the things that's not often spoken about, but it's a fact that many people struggle with. And, when you consider things about, for instance, social media, keeping up with the Joneses, you're seeing almost everyone that you graduated with is doing better than you. It puts in that pressure, like, what am I doing? Or what am I missing? What am I not doing? And things like that. But this is where you have to be extremely committed to your own goals and committed to your own limits, knowing that if I can't afford X, Y, Z, or, that's just not what I want to do now, then you actually have to be content in saying that, hey, I can be fine with this without this, and I know that I want to do something else, or these are my tastes, these are my preferences. I don't have to keep copying everyone else. I don't have to keep doing what everyone else is doing, okay? Now, that's with lifestyle changes. The other thing is being able to invest in financial education. Now, the thing or the reason why this is extremely important is that I recommend reading this article called Greatest Wealth Transfer in History, the Greatest Wealth Transfer in History, How to Position Yourself. Over the next 2 decades, it's expected that about $68 trillion are going to be transferred from the generation of baby boomers to millennials. That's a huge figure, but how this will pan out or is likely to pan out is that for some, likely their parents will pass on, or they have some form of estate or inheritance kind of wealth, right, coming on board. And for so many people, it's that, and it has been statistically proven, that about 70% of inherited wealth is lost by the second or the third generation. And why does this happen? It's just that the assumptions, as I pointed out in the point before, money illusion, that you're getting $100,000, $1 million, or something like that, and you just assume you don't even need to work, you don't even need to put any structures for that money to be to generate more income, and you don't even see the need of getting a financial advisor. So this money will run out. It does run out, and painfully so for so many people, because you wonder, even for those who win the lottery, it's that yes, they win the lottery, but months down the line, that money is gone as if it didn't exist. Why does that happen? It's in that gap. Financial education. You cannot just assume that you will have money and you just have it. Having is not enough. And as I pointed out in the first in the first aspect, is that saving is not enough, because you will need to spend as you're existing, it's that different costs will come up. Okay, so you just have to be able to manage it properly and do your best to have in the right structures to keep that money flowing. Okay, then you need to scale up on business revenue. If you have your side hustle, if you have your whatever investment or business, find ways to actually scale it and to protect it. You need to be able to save on taxes, on interest, on investment, insurance. You have to manage your debt properly, so that you don't end up with high interest rates that now detract from your value. Because remember, with inflation, it's that I highlighted that range of 2 to 10%. So if that's inflation alone, and on interest rates, you're going to you're going to have to pay at least between 11, 13, 15%, and higher interest rates on mobile lending applications, of which I really don't recommend anyone to be on them right now. It's that you have to pay that interest. So if you don't have enough income, you're already on a negative aside from inflation. So you'd rather be on this other side with investment, so that if you have your cash flow, you're able to protect that and keep that going. Other thing is thinking about sustainability and future growth. As I said, it's not enough just to have. And if you think that you have, that's one of the assumptions then that will keep you from growing. Okay. Now, one of the quotes I came about this week that I found quite interesting is this, and it's this. I'll read. Remember, kids, stay in school, get good grades, strive to be the best version of you. Work hard, study, read anything you can get your hands on. And if you're lucky, one day your future boss might have the opportunity to go into space while you're there busy working. Now, it's someone called YS, and that was on Twitter, but the reason why it got me thinking is that, there's this narrative, this expectation that because you went to a certain course, you're supposed to get work opportunities that are related to that course. And that's not the reality today. It's that you have studied one thing, but you're going to get the opportunity to work in something entirely different. You need to be able to diversify your skills, so that you can leverage one here, leverage another skill there, and at least be able to diversify your income. I think over the next 5-10 years, that will be a conversation that maybe for even employers, this might be a bit of a far shot, but one of the maybe key selling points about your workplace is that there'll be flexibility of hours, so that someone can actually decide, I want to put let's say 6 hours here and then 4 hours into something else that I know is bringing me income, because I'm taking care of my family or my friends, just my own personal life. Okay, and that's that. So still on protecting your financial value, you need to think like an institution. What does this mean? There are different issues right now that we're thinking about, right from financial inclusion, wealth creation, distribution, and universal income. Allow me to break them down. The first thing is that with financial inclusion, it's not enough for everyone to just have a bank account or access to credit. No, there are things to do with financial protection, diversifying your protection, your assets and things like that. You being able to just control your financial options and your financial future. But that's not, that's just not something that we can assume upon. There's so much to do with financial inclusion. Wealth creation versus distribution. We talk about taxing the wealthy, and there's so many considerations that come to this, because let's say you earn, or your company does net of between 100 million to $1 billion, right? Should this mean that every corporate company that does over $1 billion has to do some form of CSR? Is it right? Is it, how do we actually, consider some of these issues in the present day? And considering things like automation that are set to take over hundreds of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs, is it that universal basic income is going to solve this problem and at least make sure people don't have to sleep hungry? Because if I know that my job is going to be taken over by some robot in like 5 years, then what are my options? What am I supposed to do? Should I move to another country where my skills are going to be at least still paid for another 10 years or 15 years, right? But not to worry, this is still the scenario in which we find ourselves. Now, these issues are not going to get any easier, but this is the fact. These are conversations we need to have. We are the ones to contribute to policy. We are the ones to, give the data to actually show that these are the kind of skill sets that, for instance, governments need to incentivize, or at least bring different kind of grants so that people can, at least be cushioned to some extent when automation takes over certain jobs. Okay. And it's not enough, as in, I think I've said this too many times, that it's not enough to have your job as your only source of income. The next decade, it's going to be important for each of us to think about how we can diversify. This being one of the key figures that I also pointed out, $68 trillion. We need to be able to prepare then for one of the greatest wealth transfers in history in the next decade, because it's certainly, maybe we haven't seen it on a large scale, but we're going to see it, no doubt. Okay. Now, money is what we say it is. Currency is one tool to exchange value from one party to another. So rather than have your eye just on currencies or cryptocurrencies for that matter, think of money holistically, as I've pointed out, that, you're not just considering the figures that you have on your wallet or your bank account or in cash or on your crypto wallet or your crypto exchange, if that's how you choose to value your money, no? So think about money holistically from the aspects that I pointed out: income, investment, being able to protect what you have. Do you have a will, for instance? And that's one of the conversations that we rarely have, but we need to have, because, for instance, this year, the two cases which stood out, one gentleman, I think he's in Germany, he had $220 million equivalent in his Bitcoin wallet, but he was 2 guesses away from that wallet being shut permanently, because he had up to 7 guesses, right? So if he loses them while he's still alive, then how can he even help his family? This is $220 million. Before that, another gentleman had his, unfortunately died before his wallets were recovered. And since the family didn't even know how much money was there, but as it could be traced, eventually there were quite a number of, quite a significant portfolio in crypto, but they never knew the passwords. His family couldn't be helped, and these are things that we may assume that we'll address, but we tend not to. So these are things that we need to think about. Okay. Now, I like this quote that the stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient. And that just means that, patience comes in the fact that you know what to do with the money that you have. If you don't know what to do with that money, trust me, it'll be off your hands in no time. And that's the funny thing about money. As I said, you can think that you have it. And when you think you have it, then you realize you don't have it. So no assumptions with money. So the future of money is here. You just need to wake up to it, to do what you need to do. So if you hear about cryptocurrencies, digital currencies, as you're going to learn in the subsequent sessions, it's that you need to ask yourself, what am I doing with what I know? Is it that you will start saving a part of your income in cryptocurrencies? Is it that you will consider stocks? Is it that you will consider real estate? Is it that you will diversify? Okay, these are questions that you need to be able to sit down and ask yourself.